Hey guys, I think we're live now. Wanted to start tonight out with a crazy story. If you haven't heard, out of Colorado, heating and air related. And so, as you're filtering in here, we're going to read through this. And of course, if you have any heating and air questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. Hey Bob, good to see you. But crazy story out of Colorado, and I've got a picture of the resort up right here where we normally have, our chat, which the chat will be up in just a moment. But this is a crazy story out of Colorado. 6 people were injured Saturday morning when a heating, ventilation, and air conditioning equipment collapsed inside the indoor pool area of a Colorado resort, according to Aurora Fire and Rescue. And I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Aurora isn't that where that mass shooting was, where that guy went in the movie theater? I could be wrong on that, but Aurora must they're in the news for a lot of wrong reasons so far here. Let's see. 2 of those hurt suffered life-threatening injuries, the department said in a news release, which did not detail the nature of the industry. Did not detail the nature of the injuries. All 6 victims were taken to hospitals. So 6 victims after the heating and air system fell in this resort. And again, if you have any questions, please add those to the chat, and we'll get to those in just a moment. But again, as you're filtering in here, a picture of the resort in Colorado where a heating and air system fell this past week. Authorities received multiple calls around 10 a.m. about the HVAC system collapse inside the pool area at the Gaylord Rockies Resort and Convention Center, the news release said. Several units were sent to the scene, including the department's technical rescue team, whose members specialize in collapsed structures, and ensured firefighters had a safe environment to work in, the release said, adding there are still hazards present with the threat of ongoing falling debris and mechanical systems, which is so crazy. Obviously, I haven't gotten through the entire article here. Again, if you have any heating and air questions, please feel free to add those to the chat. But again, we're starting our show out today with a picture of the Gaylord Rockies Resort here, where an HVAC system fell and hurt 6 people. Between 50 and 100 guests were estimated to be inside the pool area at the time of the collapse, fire officials said. Aurora Fire Chief Alec Alton praised members of his agency for their response, saying they train for this type of incident every day, which is crazy. This type of incident. It's just such a tragedy. Here in Virginia, we have a resort that I worked for an electric company back then, and we did the electric in this resort near Massanutten Mountain here in Virginia. It's a resort area where there's skiing and things like that. And the resort is like an indoor water park. So I kind of wonder if that's kind of what this is. Maybe not. Might be just like say, just maybe an indoor pool. He also went on to say, I am proud of their rapid and effective response in caring for our community. A spokesperson for the Gaylord Rockies Resort and Convention Center told CNN in a statement that they were working with experts to investigate what happened. I'm really curious obviously, some folks were hurt here. Hopefully that's the end of it. Hopefully, nothing, hopefully these folks, recover and everything's okay. But, I think, it gets back to why did this happen? Obviously something happened, something failed. I remember when I used to do a lot more commercial industrial type work, we were very limited on the type of, especially if it was those buildings that had like metal beams, you had to use specific materials to attach to that. You couldn't just screw the ductwork to it or something like that. You had to do it a specific way or it would fail inspections. So I wonder if, obviously somebody's at fault here. Something happened. And is this something that was the person that was supposed to, inspect all of this after the heating and air company installed it? Did they do something? Did they not check everything properly? It's just such a tragedy. Last paragraph. We are devastated by this traumatic incident on Saturday. Our top priorities were to support emergency responders and render assistance to those directly impacted. And we're very grateful to the Aurora Fire Department for their swift actions, spokesperson Deanne French said in a statement. Moving forward, we are focused on helping our affected guests and associates, and we are working with the appropriate experts to conduct a thorough investigation. Just such a tragedy. Heating and air system fell in the pool area, hurting 6 people. So what a crazy everything. So Adrian's here. What's up, pal? Talking the falling duct. Have they figured out what or how it happened? Chlorine eats everything. That's a really good point. I mean, is this one of those deals where maybe everything was installed properly, but maybe it wasn't rated for that area, or I don't know. I think it begs the question, if it's going to be in that kind of an area, should you be hanging things above their head? I mean, I'm not as big into commercial work as I know Adrian and some of you other guys are, but what a shame. Anyway, so yeah, if you have any heating and air questions, please feel free to put those in the chat. And hello to everybody. I just thought I'd start out this has been all over the news. You can't search heating and air on any, Google or anywhere else right now without this popping up. If you click on the news tab, multiple companies have done, articles on this now. So what a crazy thing. And hopefully all those affected are, turn out to be okay and recover. So what's up, Carl? I had a job site that had about 30 feet of 26-inch round exposed duct that came down. They determined that the fasteners were to code. Fortunately, I had written up a recommendation that the indoor blower be balanced. So yeah, that's crazy. Not Adrian, Steve, but I've been called worse. I'm sorry, Steve. Must have you confused. I thought Adrian's got a channel with a name similar to yours. So sorry about that, Steve. Steve, do you do commercial work like Adrian does? That's funny. I've been called worse. I've been called worse. Yeah. So anyway, so just a crazy thing. I thought I'd start tonight's episode out with that. I'm going to try to do a little more stuff each week, more than just answering questions, but maybe, we'll have some segments on each live show. Try to keep it fresh, kind of keep it new especially for some of you guys that come every week and such. Not at reliable HVAC. You're right. I'm sorry, pal. Anyway, I've been called worse. That's funny. So anybody that has any heating and air questions, looks like we've got some other pros on here with us tonight. So feel free to put any of your questions in the chat. In the meantime, we're going to have a few different segments throughout our show. One of those segments being where I ask you guys questions. That's something that we've done in the past and kind of struck up some conversation where we were able to share ideas, impart knowledge. Maybe, other folks' experiences might be able to help you with your heating and air struggles or things you're up against. And, so we're going to kind of have some different segments like that. So tonight's first question we're going to call this segment the Ask the Audience segment. Wow, man, I am original with my names. Ask the Audience. Wow. Maybe we'll play with these names later. I have a guy, a friend of mine who does podcasting, and he does all of these funny, they'll rhyme, he'll have, what's he say? Before we, Last tip before we dip. I don't know if any of you guys listen to his podcast or not, but that's one of the things he'll say. And he's got a couple others. But anyway, so the first question in tonight's Ask the Audience segment, we're going to ask, should your heating and air company be licensed? And I know some of you guys are in certain states where that's a requirement, but believe it or not, there are states where that's not a requirement. So should your heating and air company be licensed? Why do you think so? And also, if they are not licensed, should they be punished? So, in other words, if they do work that they're not licensed to do, should they be punished? And what should they be? What would that look like? How would they be punished? I hear heating and air, or I hear homeowners say all the time, well, I think companies should be licensed and insured and all these things, and I think they should jump through all these hoops. And I actually agree with that. I believe that companies should jump through some hoops to be, in your home doing certain services. But those same homeowners sometimes will hire guys to do it on the side. They want side job Bob or Chuck in a truck or Stan in a van to install a system on the side for them, not realizing that they just hired someone, Bob or Stan or whoever might hold maybe a journeyman or even a master's license, but unless they own a company that holds the proper insurance, general liability, and a lot of the insurances that companies are supposed to have, so they're not insured, they're not actually licensed. So in my state, it's not just enough to be a master heating and air tech or a master plumber. You also have to have a contractor's license to be able to conduct business above a certain amount. So let me know your thoughts. Should a company be licensed, and why do you think that? And if they are not licensed but still conducting business, what should their punishment be? So put your thoughts there in the chat, and love to hear what your thoughts are on that. Let's see. Getting back to our chat here, Lucy Cat. I don't think I've ever seen your name on our stream here, so welcome. I live in Pennsylvania, and I have 2 quotes for HVAC heat pump with air handler systems, 2.5 ton. Price for a Fujitsu is $8,500. A run true probably is it might have auto corrected on you there. Run true by Train, $7,800. I can't find a way to compare them. I feel like the prices are high. Well, if you feel like the prices are high, definitely get more quotes. Get as many as you're willing to get. I can tell you that certain areas, prices are different. So what might be a good price here might be high in your area, or vice versa. So definitely get more quotes there. Excuse me. I do want to point out a couple things. First of all, if you're talking about just a standard heat pump system with air handler made by Fujitsu, I just want you to realize that I believe, and I could be wrong, some of you guys might know better than I do, but I believe those are just rebranded Rheem units. So Rheem and Fujitsu kind of have a partnership together, just like several other brands do. Train and Mitsubishi have something, and there are several others. So just realize if you do get more quotes and someone quotes you a Rheem or a Rude, they should be very similar. In fact, they may have the same model numbers as that Fujitsu that you got the quote for. And then as far as the Run True goes, Run True, a lot of the guys that sell Run True, they'll say things like, well, it's the same thing as a Train. It has the spine fin coil, and they'll say things like that. I don't know if that's true. I have not actually personally installed one. I don't know if I ever will. But I would say that if it were the exact same, then the prices should be close, right? And I believe that that's more of their builder grade brand to compete with some of the other, I don't want to say lower end, but, builder grade, lower end, less premium brands out there. That's what Run True is for Train. So I do know that when we were an American Standard dealer at Griffin Air, American Standard had their Ameristar product, which now I believe is Oxbox, but it was basically these imported products. And anybody that said they were the same, well, they just simply weren't. They were not the same. We installed a couple of them, a handful of them, and got away from them. I'll just say it that way. Randy says, I know my handyman Don actually does HVAC as part of his handyman services, so I'm not sure if he has to have a license for that or not because he does more than HVAC for his handyman business. So, Randy, I don't know what state you're in. If you're willing to share that, I'd love to hear it. But here in Virginia, he would not be allowed to be doing, or he's not supposed to do that. Now, I think if there was like a piece of duct that had come loose, he's allowed to repair that in a lot of cases, but he would not be able to go pull a permit and install a heating and air system. He's not a licensed heating and air company. Now, I remember years ago, a general contractor saying, well, I'm a general contractor. So in general, I can do electric and plumbing and all these different things. And I'm sorry, but he was wrong. He's not supposed to be doing those things. In Virginia, it's actually several more now, but for the longest time, we had 4 trades. So we had heating and air, and we had plumbing, electric, and gas fitting. And now it's more than that. There's actually a special license for septic and a few others. But anyway, the big 4, for the longest time, you not just needed a contractor's license, but you needed an extra master's license in one of those trades to be able to pull permits and things like that for that trade. So, but that's, good question. You said you're in Pennsylvania. And again, every state is different. There are some states that are very relaxed with this stuff. And then there are some states that are very strict. And I've even heard of some states where they'll put guys in jail, for this stuff. So everything HVAC says, yes, builder grade. Bob says, can a backup heater coil supplement a gas furnace? Bob, I think I answered you made this comment. You asked this question and I answered it. But we're going to answer it again here on our live show. Can a backup heater coil supplement a gas furnace in case of gas furnace failure? Or what is a good backup heat strategy for gas furnace failure? So, Bob, I think in general, across the industry, the answer to your question would be typically the gas furnace is the backup, right? So in cases where you did have another heat source, such as a heat pump, the gas furnace itself would be, the backup. That said, it's an interesting question. I'm actually curious on why you're asking it. Maybe you just want to have multiple ways of getting heat in case one were to fail. They do make auxiliary heat kits that you can purchase separate from, so in other words, separate from the air handler. Obviously, most folks know about the ones that slide into air handlers. We all, most folks know about those. If you have a heat pump system with electric backup, the ones that slide in there, but they do make auxiliary heat strips that can slide into the ductwork separately. And I've seen those installed with, different types of geothermal setups and things like that, where they'll actually have a whole separate auxiliary heat kit that can slide directly into the ductwork. So I don't know if that answers your question. Well, and it should answer. You said, can a backup heater? Yes, it can. But I would think that, I'm curious on why you're asking, if it were to fail, you'd want to get it repaired, right? That's what my answer to one of my customers would be. But, maybe there's something more to the story and there's a specific reason you want to have a backup for your backup, right? Good install goes a long way. I wouldn't choose the cheapest quote. In a lot of cases, I wouldn't. Joey's cleaning lady says, so if you had a new HVAC unit installed and now the noise is significant from the air intake, would you ask for the static duct readings, or is this normal on newer units? So, well, I mean, no, it's not normal. If the ductwork is sized properly, usually the goal, and guys, I'm sorry for the shaking around. I've been trying a different setup. So, I usually have like a tripod right here, and then I'm having to constantly look around it. So I'm trying something different tonight, but it also makes the camera bounce more. So I apologize. Hopefully, I don't make anybody motion sick. But anyway, so Joey's cleaning lady, I think to answer your question is you definitely want to get the static pressures checked anyway. That's something that should be checked on installation and made sure everything is okay. My question would be, if you said that it's gotten louder as time has gone on, is number one, is something wrong? Number two, are your air filters dirty? Should they be replaced? Is there something else going on that has maybe caused this to be louder? I wouldn't think that in general that as time goes on, it should get louder, right? Unless something's wrong. Now, if you said, "Hey, Josh," right from the get-go, it was loud, then I'd say, well, maybe there's something wrong here. Maybe there's an installation issue. But if you're saying, well, it wasn't loud, during installation, but now that time has gone on, it's gotten louder. Why? Let's find out why. Let's get a pro in there maybe and figure out what's going on. Randy says, I've seen exactly what you're talking about as far as the electric heat strips being installed in the ductwork, because they make electric heater kits that can be used with RV furnaces. Touche. Ryan says, I would like to see a video with actual customer feedback or data about any savings they have seen when moving from a single or two-stage furnace to modulating. I might have a customer that I'll talk to. He is very much on his on top of his utilities. He's actually a master electrician, and we've had multiple conversations about his utilities and savings and such. So maybe I'll talk to him about that. Oopie Stevie. Hopefully I'm saying that right, or maybe it's Opie Stevie. I'll just call you Stevie. How have the Bosch units been performing? Have you been going out on any service calls for failures on Bosch heat pumps? We've had a few fan motors. That seems to be the big one with the Bosch heat pumps. Not that it's happened a whole lot, but of all the failures, or issues that we've had, on ones that we've installed. Now, I have had to go behind others that have installed them and they had other issues, but on the ones that we have installed. So, for example, one of those one time was the drain pan. They had, tightened the heck out of the male adapter when they were running their drain and cracked the drain pan. Well, that's something that I think that, our guys would hopefully not do, right? And we haven't had to replace any of those. But other than that, I have a Bosch in my house. I have one of the old 1.0s that first came out when Bosch first started making them. And my fan motor failed after a couple years. So that's probably the big thing. I can't think. I think we had one unit, but see, that wasn't the Bosch. So we had one unit about 2 years ago now, that the outdoor unit was a Bosch, but the indoor unit, it was a mobile home furnace, and it had some other brand coil, ADP or one of those brands. And the indoor coil was what was leaking. So that wasn't Bosch's fault. So I would say the fan motors would be the only thing that I would, put on their list of usual suspects. Hold on one second, guys. My lovely wife is calling. She knows I do a live show every Tuesday night, but if y'all could hold on 1 second, you're going to get to see behind the scenes. Hold on 1 second. Hey. Oh. I'm on my live show. All right. Let's see. Ryan says, Also, what savings or increases in utility bills do people see when switching from gas to heat pump or vice versa? Just some content ideas. Great channel. Thanks, pal. Um, yeah, there's actually videos out there on this stuff. I've watched them. Um, I haven't really dabbled in it a whole lot. I've always went with more of, like this, where I try to give advice to homeowners on trying to avoid certain things and scams and things like that a lot of heating and air companies will do. But they are great ideas. Get down to the nitty-gritty, right? Just figure out what exactly was my savings here. There are companies out there. I know Daikin's one of them, and I've heard of other companies doing this too, where the manufacturer themselves will go out into real world situations, have systems installed, have their competitors installed, maybe at the house next door, and then monitor them. That's something that I've heard Daikin do a couple times. I know with the Fit they've done that with. And then they'll monitor it, remotely, and have real world up to date, data that they can keep track of things. Joey's cleaning lady says it was a change out from the previous and now far louder. They refuse to give any information on that and say it's working to spec. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe you might need to get a second opinion, maybe. Maybe the airflow is increased on this newer system. There's a number of things, but again, if it's gotten louder after installation, that's something that, let's look at the air filter, let's look at the static pressures, let's see what's going on there. Guy 61 says, are easy start kits worth the cost not using SN aux generator, just NTs? Well, I'm not sure what you're saying in the second part there. Are easy start kits worth the cost? Now, let me Google this and make sure that I know what you're talking about, because you might be using different verbiage than me. Easy start. I think you're talking about a hard start, and easy start is just the. Okay, no, I'm sorry. You're talking about a soft start. Okay. I'm glad I looked it up. Yeah, I actually did a video on soft starts and the benefits and so on. The idea behind a soft start is you don't have that jolt. You don't have that initial spike in energy consumption when the system turns on. It's supposed to be easier on the compressor. It'll actually quiet down the compressor. And, I think if you were to have an older system that's not under warranty anymore and you're trying to buy more time, I think installing if it's a single stage system, putting a hard start and putting some like boost juice or AC renew in there, trying to lubricate that system, make it, almost like doing an oil change on your car. The hope and dream is you just get as much life out of that system as you can. Right. And I think that would be two things that you could do to help with that. Joey's cleaning lady says, what is your opinion on heat output on the Trane American Standard versus others? Seems like they put out far less heat than others. Interesting. I don't know if I have an opinion on that. We were an American Standard dealer for a number of years, and I if you're comparing apples to apples, single stage versus single stage, or inverter versus inverter, I don't know that there's a huge difference. They have other technologies like their spine fin coil and things like that. But I don't remember there being a huge discrepancy in performance. Guy 61 says, just interested to see if easy starts will prolong the compressor life. Yeah, I mean, I tread lightly on saying yes, for sure it will, right? Because I don't want you to be upset at me if it doesn't do what you expect it to. But that's the idea, that it's going to, be less hard on that compressor, less hard starts, if you will. Bob says, background gas in the primary heat with sometimes negative 60 degree. Goodness, where are you located? Negative 60 degrees with wind chill. Long-term heat pump should be primary when the new heat pumps can handle outside temps down to negative 20. New Freon is out. Gas is the primary. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I will say this. I have had customers, they'll zone things on purpose for that, what you're describing. And the thought process is if this system fails, I've got a backup here. I've got another system in the house, and if nothing else, it'll limp us through and we'll put some fans and kind of blow that warm air to other parts of the house. But that's pretty cool. I'd love to know where you're located because that's some pretty cold temperatures. M says, "Hi Josh, I'm comparing a few quotes on different units from the top HVAC servicer in the South Bend area. I'm looking at the spec sheets and I'm wondering, is COP at low temps the best way to compare?" Best way to compare. Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It's hard to say without actually seeing your quotes what exactly you should be comparing. A lot of companies will say, "Okay, here's good, better, best. Here's why this one's better than that one." I honestly don't dive into too much of that with my customers. If they ask for specific specs or they're comparing us to another company who's given them the nitty gritty, most of our customers just want to know, they're the type of customer that either wants to get by with the least amount of investment, or they're the kind of customer that, they want the best, right? Or somewhere in between. So, I try not to get into too much of the nitty gritty. I give them the opportunity to. I tell them exactly what we're installing. And Daikin's always been real transparent about that stuff. You can go right online and look up exactly what your pro can go look up. And that's one of the reasons I've always liked them. But, just I as you're comparing them, that might be one thing you look at, but, might not be the only thing. Ryan says, "Guy 61, I have a micro air easy start soft starter, and it works great. Lowe's the inrush, I'm guessing. Lowe's the inrush amps, and it also works with my standby generator well." A lot of folks that have generators look at soft starts for sure. But you might have been talking about a hard start. No, I think he is talking about a soft start. Emery, welcome back. Emery's been here on a few shows with us. Is a failed heat pump reversing valve an expensive fix? Yes, I think it's one of the most expensive fix. Very labor intensive. Reversing valves. Not a fan. I'll put in 10 TXVs before having to do a reversing valve. I'm just not a fan. You got to be really good at brazing. And I will admit I'm not the best. I do well enough, but some of these guys are just, they're like artists with their brazing. M says, "I should mention one's a single stage heat pump and the other is an inverter with higher efficiency heat pump, but also when max heating capacity is less BTUs required, is this when the backup air handler kicks in?" When max heating capacity. I'm sorry. I'll tell you this. When you're comparing inverter systems to single stage systems, it's and I don't know what you're looking at. I don't know what brand it is. I don't know if it's got communicating technology, a lot of those questions that would affect this, but I can tell you this, that inverter technology is far superior to single stage technology. And what I mean by that is if you're comparing apples to apples and you're looking at some of these ratings, and so one might be only, a couple C or better, or a couple HSPF, or all these different ratings that you're looking at, but it doesn't tell the full story when you actually look into what the technology is and the benefits. I'm a big believer in it. I know there's still heating and air guys out there that are fighting the fight, and they're saying, "No, it's too high in price and it fails more," which is such a load of bull. But I just we all have an opinion, and my opinion is when you're comparing now, if you're comparing two inverter systems, we can talk ratings, right? Or if you're comparing two single stage systems, we can talk ratings. But when you're comparing a single stage system to an inverter system, the inverter system technology is so far superior that some of the ratings don't tell the full story. It's sort of like saying that a hybrid car, right? So a hybrid car that burns gasoline and say electric versus and let's just say that car gets, 40 miles to the gallon on gas. And then you compare it to a truck over here that is straight gasoline and it's, gets 30 miles to the gallon. Well, it's hard to compare the two because the car that, oh yeah, it gets a little better gas mileage, but it's also hybrid. It gets, it's electric, and there's times that it'll be driving and it doesn't even burn gas, right? That's the difference. That's when you're talking about inverters versus single stage systems. The technology is so far ahead that it's hard to compare them. That's my 2 cents. I know there's other guys out there, other heat and air guys that feel differently, but that's my thoughts. And we've installed a lot of both. And, this whole baloney on how they fail more and the repairs are significantly more in cost. First of all, the compressors hardly ever fail on inverter systems, especially Daikins, which is why we install those. And the other thing is, a lot of these parts that they're talking about, yeah, they do cost more, but when you start to do the math and I don't know, they're going to come to whatever conclusion they want to, and I will too, right? It's sort of like when you have two people that, one's in a bad mood and one's in a good mood, and they both read the same book and they both get two different things out of it, right? I think that's the same deal there with that whole argument. Tech Junkie's another one of our regulars. What's up, pal? I would think a lot of labor. The guy 61 says no NIT hard start. So maybe that easy start that we were talking about earlier, maybe he was talking about a hard start. I'm not sure. Ryan says, do you ever salvage parts from? No, I don't. I don't even have to read the rest of this question. I don't do that. What would I do with those parts? Sell them to another customer? I wouldn't be able to sleep at night doing that, selling them used parts that are going to fail. A lot of the components, that's the thing. A lot of folks don't know, when they're talking about, they'll be comparing, it doesn't make sense to repair or replace, but there's more to it than just the price versus the price, because sometimes when you got a unit that's getting older and other components are starting to fail, you selling that component from a unit that you pulled out, you might be selling somebody, someone else's headache, if that makes sense. I've always wondered what happened to those systems, if they were thrown away at the dump or saved for parts. What we do is recycle them. We'll break them down and take them to the metal scrapyard and get a couple bucks, and then I give that money. We've done lunches with the guys with that money, or sometimes we'll just give them a cut. If we have a really good payday, taking several units to the metal scrapyard, we'll, split it amongst all of us. Tech Junkie says, just get it sized correctly and find the COP at your typical temperature. Bruce says, hi, Josh. What's up, Bruce? Tech Junkie says, Ryan, do you want used parts in your unit? Exactly. I mean, you might be able to give them a break or something, but man, it would be tough to do that. Ryan says, no, I don't want old parts, but some people might. Yeah, I mean, they might want to save the money, but I don't even know that you're going to save that much. Fan motors and control boards would be the only thing that I could think that you would really have enough savings to even consider that. I definitely wouldn't swap a compressor or anything to do with refrigerant metering devices. And then when you start to talk about things like contactors, relays, and capacitors, well, they're so that the problems that you might be buying and the couple dollars, and when I say couple dollars, I mean like less than $50 that you would spend on that part, just get the new one. Tech Junkie says, I need to find out what the cooling dehumidification option for a Daikin fit. There's none, standard, max, medium, and minimum. Also, what best cooling profile to use. I was actually just messaging with someone else about this earlier because they're getting an error on their Daikin one. I don't know if it was a fit or not, but they were getting an error for the overcooling to dehumidify or something like that, and it had to do with the settings and the profiles and stuff. I don't have that information for you. Now we might just be lucky because we're in Virginia. I will say once you figure it out, I would stick with that same profile for all your customers in that state for the most part. And one example like I would throw out there is when we found out years ago that the Bosches would dehumidify better if we switched on one of the certain dip switches, we just started doing it to all of them. We wouldn't just flip it on when they had an issue. We would flip it on always for all installations. So looks like we've got a good crowd here. If you've got a heating and air question, please share it in our chat. Otherwise, you can just, follow along and watch this fat face answer these questions. Jack says, Emery says, how hard is brazing a compressor? It's not hard, but you definitely want to know what you're doing. And you also want to make sure that you flow an inert gas when you're brazing. And there's plenty of videos on why that is, the oxidizing and all that good stuff. Jack says, I liked your ducting versus zoning video. Thanks, pal. I feel like I left a few things out with that, especially when you have one room hot in the house versus the rest. It's not always a ductwork issue or a zoning issue. You might have something else going on, but I was trying to keep that video. If you're just comparing the two was the idea. I had a company change ducting to one room, helped a lot. I opted for an extra unit for when running high wattage entertainment and extra hot day. That's interesting. I have a customer that did that recently too. They wanted a mini split in their bedroom. They didn't want us to look at the ductwork and figure it out. They just wanted a mini split so they could have maximum comfort in that room. Brian, another one of our regulars. What's up, Brian? At least I think you're the guy that's been with us a few times. I have grabbed a part because of back order. That is true. I haven't done that in a long time, but I feel like maybe I've done that in the past years ago, right? You need something specific and you just kind of grab it to get them going. Maybe. That's not something that we do a lot, but I could see that. Tech Junkie says, Ryan, imagine how I'm not going to read this whole comment, but that's funny. Jason says, each year my tech come and check the pressure in my Bryant HP. Will it eventually run low when each time he lets off gas connecting his gauges? Yes. The answer is yes on that. Eventually he might have to add, but it it's a lot. And I would say it's going to take a couple years of him connecting his gauges every time he does preventative maintenance. It's going to take, if he's only coming yearly, so it's probably taking, 3 or 4 years, as long as there's not a refrigerant leak before that were to affect the system much, in my opinion. As long as he's there is ways to connect your gauges and then purge them and then put that refrigerant back in the system. But you really got to know what you're doing. And if you don't have really good gauges and you don't purge it right, you could also be putting atmospheric air back in there. Honestly, if you've got a guy that's doing good maintenance and he's checking your refrigerant every year and you have to pay for 1 pound of refrigerant or 2 pounds after a few years, just I wouldn't worry about that, in my opinion. You want him checking it. You want him to make sure the pressures are right. And that way that system's running as efficient as possible again. And, I think that that's a small price to pay for the amount of utility savings that you're going to have if he weren't doing that, Gary's another new face. Welcome on. Are inverters hard to diagnose issues? What are some of the common failures? How long before they show issues? Well, that depends. There's a lot of variables on that question. Are they harder to diagnose? In some cases, yes. Um, and what I mean by that is if you get a good experienced service tech, a lot of them can just walk right up to a unit, a single stage unit, and know what's going on based on experience. I feel that way about me. I feel like I can usually walk up to a unit and narrow it down pretty quick on what I'm up against. There are exceptions to that rule, maybe like a low voltage short, but other than that, usually we can diagnose it pretty quick. But in contrast, I would say that some of the communicating inverter systems are going to be easier to diagnose than, say, a single stage system because of the communicating technology. It will actually tell you what's wrong in some cases. So, how long before they show issues? There's no real answer to that. If installed properly, the hope and dream would be you'd have no issues, right? Over the life of that system for 10 or 12 years, at least while the warranty is in place, right? But there's always times when that's not the case. It's official says, Jason, you have a leak. Most of the time, hoses won't take much to really cause much of an impact. That's true. Brian says, I save variable speed motor heads. Interesting. Tech Junkie says, you're not saving money on used parts. No way would a company be able to afford warranty, labor, and any savings would be toast in 2 years. Gregory says, another new face. Welcome, Gregory. I got sized and quoted for a 4-ton Mitsubishi Smart Multi Hyperheat. I'm worried that this thing will use more power than I anticipated. How little power can these use? I have 5 indoor units spec'd. Well, that's a good question. The company that quoted you it, maybe they can do an amp draw on a system that's running. The reason it's hard to answer that is a lot of times when you look at the amp ratings on the side of these units, those are usually for maximum capacity ratings. So if it says amp draw or an RLA or something like that, it's usually, they're telling you what the worst case scenario is, kind of, right? Or at least close to it. And so a lot of these inverter systems are going to be drawing significantly less than that. At times, right? On mild days is the hope and dream. So it's hard to say, but maybe they have one in place that they can, let you go check out. I've done that with customers. They said, well, I'm not really sure about what you're about to sell me. Do you have any other customers that have bought them? And, they can go take a peek at it. We can always throw an amp clamp on it, stuff like that. Tech Junkie says, Gregory, well, you're not going to be as efficient as you could be if you have those 5 units running off a single outdoor unit. Do you have ductwork? That is true. So a lot of folks think that if it's an outdoor unit with multiple heads, they don't understand how much the capabilities of the systems, especially the humidity control and the zoning and all of that is maximized when they have separate outdoor units, meaning 1-to-1. So for every indoor unit, you have an outdoor unit, but every house is different. Maybe you don't want 5 units sitting outside, but maybe you could get away with 2, right? Maybe you could have, one 1-to-1, or 2, and then have like a 3 zone, I don't know. Every house is different, but there is a lot to be said for having 1-to-1s versus multi-zones. Jason, I think Jason's new with us too. So welcome, Jason. They've never added Freon. Oh, Jason's the same guy from earlier. I'm sorry, Jason. I say a lot of dumb things, guys. They never added Freon. They always say pressures are good when they do their PM. So that's good. Bruce says, I'm driving. I hope that I was legible. Be careful driving and listening. Tech Junkie says he could be using the field piece gauges. No, almost no refrigerant is lost. That's very true. If they don't have hoses like some of these wireless gauges, then you hardly use any. You just get that psh when you remove the probe. Brian says I have changed lots of inverters, mostly VRV. That's interesting. But I think, Brian, don't you do a lot more commercial stuff? In residential, if you're saying you've changed them, is that because of compressor failures? Because if it's I've only ever had one. Whereas with single stage or multi-stage units, I've replaced hundreds, if not thousands, of compressors. When it comes to inverters, I've only ever replaced one. And I'm not going to even tell you what brand it was because I don't think it matters. They don't fail that often. The one that failed that I'm talking about, it was one of those DIY people that was trying to, it wasn't a DIY brand. It was one of the big brands, but he had bought the unit online and installed it and had done some things. It was a mess, but then the compressor ended up failing. He wasn't pulling vacuum and things like that. Jack says, after hearing how expensive the inverter drive is to replace, I installed an oversized surge suppressor. I've heard of soft start units, but thinking inappropriate for unit since it starts slow. Man, you guys are rolling tonight. I'm going to take a break here from reading your comments and go to another segment of our show. Again, I'm going to try to start having little segments each week and where we, ask questions of you guys and a few other things. This segment, I'm going to call them, product ideas. Each week I want to go over kind of, some of them are goofy, some of them are real actual products, but they're still kind of an odd idea, things like that. And so we're going to call this the product idea segment. And this week I wanted to, the idea that I was going to throw out there is I'm surprised we still see ductwork being done the way it was 30 to 50 years ago. A lot of ductwork, we're still seeing the galvanized metal with insulation. Some of the insulating techniques are newer with the spray foam and even the bubble wrap, not being much of a thing years and years ago. But I'm surprised we haven't seen, and maybe this is because of carbon footprint, but I feel like there's ways to get around that too. I don't know. But I'm surprised we haven't seen more plastic ductwork options out there, because plastic, if they had some sort of, real rugged plastic and you could figure out a way to click it together and install it and it's sized right and all of that stuff, and then you still insulate it, I'm surprised we haven't seen some sort of plastic ductwork out there, because it would last forever, right? In comparison, whereas metal ductwork will rust and it'll start to fail and it'll, all these different things. I feel like if they had some sort of plastic ductwork, it would last a whole lot longer. So let me know what y'all think of that, comment in our chat on that, on plastic ductwork. If we had some sort of, now I know what some of you pros are going to say. Well, Josh, they do have plastic ductwork. They've got duct socks and they've got these, this ductwork that can run under concrete slabs and things like that. I know I'm talking about replacing what we consider, what we all know as, the metal ductwork or even duct board. We see a lot of the parts of the country, they still use that. Why has it not been replaced with something a little more, lasting, like some sort of plastic, right? I feel like it could seal better. You click it together and maybe even kind of have some sort of way of fusing it. I don't know, just something I've always wondered. Maybe not always, but I've wondered that before. Why are we still doing this metal stuff? I don't know. Maybe it's easier to work with. Maybe it's cheaper. Maybe it's because of the carbon footprint. I don't know. That's interesting though. Back to your questions. Let's see. Emery says, if the compressor is running and not the fan, what kind of test do you do to determine if it's a capacitor failure? I test the capacitor. So there is an actual capacitance rating on there. I see other guys do this thing where they'll wrap the amp clamp around it and use these other techniques. There's a formula you can use. To me, it's way faster for me to just kill power and check capacitance, honestly. Tech Junkie says, read up on that and then start crying if you have multiple indoor units. Indoor heads, that is. Sonny says, long-time subscribers. Welcome, Sonny. Thanks for doing the chat. Question is it normal to pay for a maintenance plan, but they only test the system and don't clean the coils? They told me that was separate. There are companies that do checkups, and then there are companies that don't do checkups. They do actual tune-ups. Like, for example, my company, we don't do checkups. There are companies that'll say, for $59, we'll check your system over. Have all these different ways of trying to get in your home to sell stuff, right? So maybe that's what you're talking about. Maybe they have one price for checkups, and then if you want an actual tune-up done or some sort of cleaning, maintenance to the system, then that's a different price. So unfortunately, to answer your question, is it normal? Yes, it is normal with some companies. Tech Junkie says, Emery, a voltmeter if the compressor is running, blah, blah, blah. Let's see. Tech Junkie says, I think they do. I'm 99% sure I've heard of plastic ductwork, but it's not caught on yet. It's clicked together fittings. Interesting. Okay. Well, maybe it's out there and I've just haven't laid hands on it. I know Diversitech had some sort of ductwork that was supposed to be a little more like that, but I guess I envision something different, something like what we're used to seeing with hard duct, with the hard metal stuff, but it be plastic, I guess, where, but it just all clicked together or not, you still have to run screws. I don't know. But, some might say, well, Josh, we do metal because it's easier to fabricate things. I feel like it'd be easier to fabricate with plastic. There's no sharp edges. You just cut the links you need and you fuse it together or glue it together or screw it together in some way. I don't know. I just feel like that there are ways that it would be better and it would last longer. Ryan says plastic does break down into microplastics over time, but that is a great idea. I mean, that is true. And that's the other thing. They could come up with a way to make it, have a smaller carbon footprint, in my opinion. I mean, what do I know? I'm just a heat and air guy, but scientists, I feel like, could make it maybe more biodegradable, or maybe, I don't know, have a plastic that once it does, get buried in the ground, that it, meets, I don't know. You guys know more than I do about that stuff. So Gary says, the company I work for refuses to install or work on mini splits, planning on starting my own thing and wondering if I should offer them. I've installed a few for friends. So far, no issues. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't offer them. That's interesting. Maybe they specialize in, like, specialized ductwork fabrication or something, and I don't know. But I feel like most heating and air companies, if the majority of them, will install a mini split for you these days. I could be wrong, but most residential companies, I would think, do. Bob says the Unico company used plastic tubing to corner. Yeah, I mean, I've installed those. That's true. Maybe that's where I came up with this weird idea. The little plastic tubes that Unico has. Bakersfield Public Service 3. I think that's another new one, so welcome. Hi, I'm trying to pick between a Daikin 14-seer single-stage AC with DC 96 furnace versus a Daikin Fit AC with the same furnace versus a Daikin Fit heat pump with matching furnace. Okay. 12 warranty on all three. 3-story, 1,300 square feet condo in the Midwest. Energy cost savings are not really an issue. What should I go with? Thank you. Well, a lot of folks, when they're comparing inverter systems, they're starting to this argument on energy savings versus not, and all these other arguments that folks will make. They don't consider homeowners are starting to consider more than just the energy costs, such as, an inverter system is going to be significantly quieter. The fit is going to take up less room. They have more reliable compressors. That swing compressor that Daikin has. I think they told us one time in one of the classes I was in that the failure rate is 0.001%. And I don't know what the failure rate on the single stage systems are, but it's higher than that. I could tell you that. So I'm not going to tell you which one you should go with, but that's maybe a few things you can consider. Sonny says $185 a year. They come twice a year. They spend about 30 minutes each time. They tell me everything is good. They clean the system, which is so they're doing more than a checkup if they're cleaning the system. Ryan says I have plastic tubes with my radon pipe that is under my vapor barrier in the crawl space. It clicks together and is 200 feet. Is that the ductwork, Ryan? Or is that something else? I know when vapor barriers are put down, I've seen where they put down that corrugated tubing and they have a way for that to get the water out of the crawl space. So maybe that's what you're talking about. I don't know. George says, can you explain in plain terms an inverter? George, you haven't seen any of my videos, pal. And welcome. I'm going to explain it real quick. So an inverter system would be sort of like a dimmer switch for a light, meaning if you were to have a single stage system, it would be like a traditional light switch. It's either off or on. And then a multi-stage system would maybe have stages. So it would be off, 70% capacity, 100% capacity, fully on. And then finally, an inverter system, imagine it like a dimmer switch where there's a lot of ups and downs. And there are times when it's just barely running on a mild day. So that's kind of the quick snapshot in plain terms, as you put it, of what an inverter is. Gary says, how long do you warranty labor on inverters? So we do at Griffin Air, we do a 3-year labor warranty with all of our Daikin installations. And that includes systems that are single stage. And then we offer 12-year parts and labor through a third-party company. So 12-year parts and labor warranty. Tech Junkie says, it's like a gas pedal, only goes as fast as needed. That's true. That's another good analogy. Ryan says, I know Zender makes plastic ductwork for their HRV and ERV systems. They call it Comfo PIP ducting and Comfo tube ducting. Interesting. Yeah, so maybe I'm not as original as I thought. Tech Junkie says a company wouldn't offer mini splits because they are old school, old people, old thoughts. Maybe, but maybe they specialize in something else. Maybe they don't, I will say that the margins on, that some of these guys are installing mini splits at, I'm like, why are you even doing it? You have to spend a whole day or half a day to install it, and you're doing it for, pennies on the dollar, which is fine. They can do it however they want. It's just my guys, they want to be paid a livable wage and they have families, and I have to pay them well. And unfortunately, I can't do it for, pennies on the dollar. We've got to charge what a premium installation would cost. So, but maybe you're right. Maybe they just don't want to get on board with the newer stuff. Rich says, get this. First company says I need a new AC. They found a coil leak. Second vendor says system is running perfect and should last another 5 to 10 years. Third vendor is coming out Friday. Interesting. Hopefully you're back on with us next week, Rich. I'd love to hear the rest of that story. Those of you that might not be seeing Rich's comment, he's on our Facebook Live. So a lot of you guys are on our YouTube Live. Rich is on our Facebook Live. And then he just popped up on our YouTube. So interesting. So maybe you guys are seeing it. Let's see. Ryan says, What is the pricing range for an extended labor warranty in your area? It depends on what the labor warranty is offering. So our labor warranty, I think the pay rate is like $85, so not that high. 12-year parts and labor warranty, and I think we charge around $700 to $800 for that. Tech Junkie says, can the Fit have any brand ventilated dehumidifier connected and operate the fan appropriately? I have no idea how a whole house dehu works when ducted into the unit. Depends on the house, first of all, on that second part. But on the first part, yes, they do have dry contacts. But on the second part, we will a lot of times not even connect it into the ductwork. We'll put it in the crawl space if it has a crawl space beneath the house. And then I've actually, so I was in a class one time where the guy from April Air had someone call about a dehumidifier and say, hey, I did everything right and I'm still not getting the humidity down. And I heard him tell them, disconnect the ducts, just set it in the crawl and let it do its thing. And, and I guess it got the humidity down. Emery says, what kind of warranty does Daikin offer on its products? So it depends on which product we're talking about. Some of their products come with, most of the products come with a 12-year parts warranty. Some of them come with unit replacement warranties. Some of them come with lifetime warranties on certain things like heat exchangers. So it just depends on which part you're talking about. And then Home Rapid Repair. What's up, pal? He's a friend of mine we're in a Discord group together. And he says we see Rich on YouTube. So good. Yeah, I don't know how that works because I'm using StreamYard as my service. And there are times when comments are coming in on different platforms like Facebook, and it doesn't show up on the live that's right here that you guys see on the screen. So sometimes I'm reading stuff and you guys aren't seeing it. So anyway, I'm going to probably wrap up here in just a moment. I don't know if you guys like these segments that I'm doing. I'm just trying to break it up a little bit. The last few shows, the last segment of the show. So if you're here, don't leave us if we start to wrap up, because our last segment of the show is where you guys get to share companies that are in your local area that are good. So now you might say, well, why do I care about that, Josh? Well, you might be in one of their areas. So if you're in Dallas, Texas, and somebody says, hey, in Dallas, Texas, I use so-and-so and they're amazing. So the last segment of the last several shows we've done has been you guys sharing, good companies and what city they are in or what area they service. And so we're going to do that again tonight. It gives you guys an opportunity to give shout outs to good companies. And that's what we'll call that segment, shout outs to good companies, because I'm just so original and amazing. Emery says, and just so you know, guys, I had somebody tell me a couple weeks ago how arrogant I am. I have a dry sense of humor. I actually don't think I'm that amazing. So there you go. So somebody told me I was so arrogant because I said something like that to them. And so anyway, they just don't understand my horrible sense of humor. Emery says, so the warranties on heat exchangers and compressors is what I am asking about. Yeah, it's on their website. If you go to DaikinComfort.com, if you get a quote on a system, you just look up that system and they usually will have it. You just scroll down on that product and it'll usually have the cute little, 12-year warranty, light heat exchanger, lifetime warranty, whatever. But they'll also, if you go a little lower than that, they'll usually have a tab right there that you can click and open up the terms and conditions of their warranties, which and that's all brands just about do that, where you'll be able to go to their website and look up, what the actual terms are of their warranties, what voids those warranties, what if there's something different in certain states, all the things that would affect your warranty. So again, guys, we are going to be wrapping up soon. If you have any more questions, make sure you get those into the chat. And then you guys that do want to share a good company in your area, don't do it yet. We'll do a rapid fire in just a moment, but share what their company name is and where area they service or what city they're in. And that way you guys can give shout outs to good companies. Tech Junkie says, okay. Well, then I may install it myself then. Ductwork is in the attic and I'd rather have the unit in the basement. Yeah, I mean, honestly, my dehumidifier that I have in my basement slash crawl space, I have one of those like it's a basement, but then it kind of goes. Our house is built on a hill, so it becomes a crawl space at the other end of the house. But we have a dehumidifier down there, and it's totally separate. It's not connected to the ductwork, and it's not connected to my indoor thermostats controllers. I don't have a humidistat inside. I have it. It's all down in that area. But supply fresh air to the house. Yeah, there you go. Emery says, "Do you install commercial?" I only have a couple commercial accounts. So, and I'm very picky about that. I don't do rooftop units or any of that. I've had multiple people tell me how much money there is in it and all that stuff. My problem is finding good help. If I found some good folks, I've got some good guys, but they're very few and far between. I've only got a few good guys, and we do the best we can with what we have. So that's where we're at. So I don't do a lot of commercial other than I have a vet office that we take care of, and I have a couple restaurants that we take care of. So anyway, if there's no more questions, we're going to wrap up in just a moment. Go ahead. If you have a good heat and air company in your area, they've done, regardless of why you like them, please share who they are and what city or area they're located in, what areas they service. Shout outs to good companies. And, if you don't have a good one in your area that you have found, then maybe you will find one now. Maybe somebody is actually on our chat here and they will share with you, maybe you'll find a good company here. So go ahead and shout out any good companies in your area that, where they're located, what areas do they service, what city are they in, and what their name is, obviously. And I'll let you guys get to that. Emery says, "What is the most common HVAC failure you deal with?" Depends on what time of year it is. Most common, I would say, in the summer is probably failed capacitors. But I'll say this: most common HVAC failure that I deal with is a lot of times poor installations, which cause failed capacitors or premature failure of a lot of other parts. Bakersfield Public Service says, "Any recommendations for the greater Indianapolis area?" I don't have any, but hopefully somebody else in this area or somebody else on our chat. Sometimes folks will watch this back later and throw a few comments in there. So if any of you guys are around the Indianapolis area, if I'm not mistaken, isn't Indianapolis close to Louisville? And I ask that because is it possible that there's a good company in Louisville and they would just cross that bridge? I don't know. Bob says Morrow Mechanical in the Houston metro area is a very good company and they service my unit. So shout out to, I might not even be pronouncing that correctly, Morrow Mechanical. So shout out to those guys. Doesn't look like anybody else wants to shout out tonight. We did this I think it was last week or the week before. One week we had like 15 companies in our chat here. So again, if you do have a good heating and air company in your area and you want to share where they're located and what their name is, feel free to do that. We are going to wrap up in just a moment. As we're wrapping up and you guys are sharing those, I'm going to share with you one other story. And this is just kind of a general story. I don't know if, let me just open. I don't know that it's not going to affect you necessarily if you're not in this area, but it might affect you. Yeah, it might give you something to go off of. So this is a story about a power company in North Carolina. It says Duke Energy is offering free refrigerators, HVAC systems, more to qualifying customers in Guilford, Forsyth counties, Greensboro, North Carolina. If you live in Guilford or Forsyth County and you get power through Duke Energy, you may be able to get some new appliances and a cheaper power bill. Duke Energy will soon be launching a pilot program for the company's new initiative, High Energy Usage Assistance. This program aims to give free energy improvements to renters and homeowners who are at or below 200% of the federal poverty level and use at least 17,800 kilowatts hours a year. The program is only available to the 3 North Carolina counties, Forsyth, Guilford, and Mecklenburg. So folks in that area, I know it's a very small area, but I've heard of folks in our area, getting different. The whole point is maybe there's something you could be taking advantage of with your local power company and you didn't know about it. And so you should look into that. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty about the actual qualifications for this particular program, but it says Duke Energy lists 8 possible improvements: your HVAC replacement, Energy Star refrigerator replacement, comprehensive air sealing, energy efficient lighting, duct sealing, heat pump, water heaters, insulation, and water saving fixtures. So this is it's actually really cool, with this stuff being free. I don't know where, maybe it's some sort of grant that they got for these counties or something like that. But, there's some folks that could take advantage of this and, really be able to affect their bottom line here. Let's see, getting back, looks like you guys shared a few companies. Arch Stanton says, I've been quoted a day and night, Ream and Rude, York and American Standard, 3.5 ton, 13.5 to 14 SEER2. Any recommendations? Arch, I would worry less about the brand. I'm not a huge fan of York, but that's just my preference. I'd worry less about the brands and go with the better company. So if you like one of those companies giving you the warm fuzzies, I'd go with the brand they recommend and we'll stand behind. George says in Bend, Antigone, sorry if I'm butchering that, Mount View HVAC, best tech is Larry S. So shout out to Larry. George is showing you some love, pal. Shout out to Larry if he ever sees this. Maybe you could tell him about it, George, that I shouted him out live to the masses. Arch says, I live in Southern Arizona. George says Mount View, Bend, Oregon. Oh, I'm sorry. Gotcha. Oregon. That makes sense. Arch says the American Standard is more than we can afford to spend. Ryan says, I live there. Can you post the link in the chat? Those are large counties here in North Carolina. Yeah, Ryan, if you just, let's see. Oh, here we go. Post the link in the chat. There you go, sir. The rebates from our utility program was for only very high efficiency companies. Yeah, and some rebates make sense and some of them don't, that can be said about some of these rebates with this new Inflation Reduction Act as well, Hughesman HVAC says a good install makes a world of difference. Very true, pal. Arch says that's what I've gathered from that the installation is the most important factor. All right, guys. I'm going to wrap up here. If you have, as we're wrapping up here, any last companies and what areas they're in, please feel free to share those. But yeah, very good live show this week. We're going to be back again next week at 8:30 p.m. here on the East Coast, Eastern Standard Time. So figure out what that is, your time, and we'll be back answering heating and air questions. And I've got some other new segments that we're going to be rolling out. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that tonight, where we were, sharing some of the news around, the internet and the heating and air industry, and then, some of these other questions that we went over. But I appreciate you guys watching. Appreciate your support. If you haven't subscribed, for real, it helps out so much. Please subscribe. And I just appreciate, all the support. So let's see. Emery says, besides oversizing, what else can contribute to short cycling? Lots of things. Low refrigerant, high refrigerant. Both of those could cause that system to be constantly short cycling based on some systems. If it gets multiple high pressure, soft lockouts, then it'll eventually go into a hard lockout. But that, there's a multiple things that could cause short cycling. If you have a unit that is short cycling, I would have a pro take a look. Arch says, is a programmable low airflow would be another one. So if you have a dirty air filter, that will cause the system to short cycle. Arch says, subscribed. Thanks, pal. Is a programmable thermostat worth it? If you're talking about one that runs a schedule, it just depends. Depends on where you are in the country, and depends on what you're using it for. So I'll give you a good example. If you're using it on a heating system that has backup heat, and the backup, I'm probably going to get way too technical, but a lot of thermostats have an internal heat droop of 2 degrees from the factory. That's the way the system is designed. Now, some thermostats, you can change that, but in general, that 2 degree heat droop basically means if there's ever a 2 degree discrepancy between what the ambient temperature is in the room and what you have it set at, right? So if the ambient temperature in the room is 70 and it drops to 69 and you've got it set at 72, then it's going to kick in that second stage heat and bring it up. Well, the problem with that is if you have the system turning off when you're not there during the day, you go to work and you have it, drop 10 degrees while you're not there to save energy. And then all of a sudden, it turns on to bring, warm it back up, bringing on that backup heat. The math may not work out, so there are times when folks should probably just set it at a temperature and just leave it there at all times. But there are times when, if you have a system that's, say, dual fuel and it's going to run off of whatever stage it's in regardless, and you can save some energy. Maybe you have LP gas and you're trying to save some gas utility bills, or you have an AC system with some sort of, every brand calls it something different, adaptive recovery or whatever, but it has a way of saying, okay, it takes me an hour to reach temperature. So an hour before he gets home, let me turn the AC on. It may make sense. So in general, I don't think they would have invented them if they weren't worth it in most cases, but there are times when you might find out that it's not worth it. I'm not a fan of some of the things that they're putting on a lot of these thermostats, the geofencing and all of that stuff. I don't want my thermostat knowing if I'm home or not. It's just me. But if you're talking about running a schedule and things like that, I could see I run a schedule on one of my thermostats, certain parts of the year. And when my wife worked during the day, we definitely ran schedules. So just throwing that out there. We had a Honeywell 8000, so we could control the backup timer. And so even if the heat droop was significant, it would give the heat pump a chance to reach temperature before bringing on backup heat. So Trisha says, would like a recommendation in Bradenton, Florida for a mini split. So yeah, if any of you guys have any recommendations down in Florida, I don't know anybody down there. Oh, I take that back. I do know a couple guys, but I don't know where exactly they're located. I've just met some good guys at, conventions or classes I've been to that were out of Florida. So Anyway, we're going to wrap up, guys. No more questions. I'm not going to answer anymore. But if you do have any, again, any good heating and air companies that you want to do a shout out to, would love to see that in our comments section. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week, same time, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, live. And y'all have a great week. Make it a great week. Thank you.